So, something you'd think would be totally routine, a government form, has just blown up online. We're talking about the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there's a new question on it that has a lot of people asking, what in the world is going on?
And yeah, this post right here, it pretty much sums up how everyone's feeling. I mean, for years, these demographic questions on forms were standard, right? You check a box, you move on. But this new question, it feels different. It signals some kind of shift, and people want answers. So let's get into it. We're going to break down what this change actually is, the history that might explain it, and the theories on why it's all happening right now.
All right, so let's get specific. What exactly is this change? Well, it's not just asking for your race anymore. They're digging a whole layer deeper. And this is what's got everyone talking. Look at this. Instead of just one white checkbox, you've now got all these options: German, Irish, English, Italian. This kind of breakdown for this one specific category is totally new, and it's really the heart of all the confusion. Which, of course, brings up the big question: why? Why this data, and why right now? The government doesn't just collect data for fun, right? There's always a reason. And the sources we're looking at say that to figure out the future of this data, you've actually got to look to the past. Because, and this is wild, the whole idea of who is considered white in America, it hasn't always been this one solid group. The definition has actually changed a lot over time. And that history, well, it's key to understanding the theories about what's going on today. Yeah, check this out. For a huge chunk of American history, if you were an immigrant from Ireland or Italy or Poland, you weren't seen as fully white, not at all. You were considered different, a separate and often an inferior ethnic group compared to the Anglo-Saxons who were dominant at the time. And this timeline really lays out that journey. So you see in the late 1800s, they show up and face a ton of prejudice. Then, fast forward to the early 1900s, and the eugenics movement is literally classifying them as genetically inferior. It wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that these groups finally got absorbed into the bigger white category. But here's the kicker. The source we're looking at argues this wasn't some moment of enlightenment. It was a political move, a way to make the majority group even bigger. And look, this wasn't just some fringe belief. This was completely mainstream stuff. I mean, you had political cartoons painting Irish immigrants as these violent thugs and Italian immigrants as criminals. They were constantly being compared unfavorably to Anglo-Saxons. It was a seriously hostile time.
Okay, so how does all of that history connect back to a financial aid forum in 2026? Well, the theory from the source material is that this new data collection, it might be the very first step toward bringing back a hierarchy, but this time within whiteness itself. The argument goes something like this. A new, much more detailed racial hierarchy could be on the horizon. One where, the old Anglo-Saxon category is right at the top, and those same Southern and Eastern European groups that were once on the outside, they could get separated out all over again, put in a different spot in this whole new structure. And this quote from the source really hits the nail on the head. It gets to the heart of the fear here. The big worry is that once you can separate these groups with statistics, you can also start to target them. It becomes way easier to create these narratives that pit one group against another for things like college admissions or, you guessed it, financial aid. So the source takes this idea and zooms out a bit, framing it as part of a much bigger historical pattern. And the warning is pretty clear. The kinds of systems used to control or discriminate against one group, they're usually tested on the most marginalized people first, and then they get expanded to everyone else. At its core, the argument is this. Things like mass surveillance or the erosion of civil liberties, these tactics are often tried out and normalized on Black communities first, and only later are they applied to the wider population. And the logic, when you think about it, is pretty straightforward. Once a society decides that certain actions are okay to use against one group, well, the justification is already there to use those same actions against another group later on. According to the source, Black Americans have been sounding this alarm for a long time, warning that the system would eventually come for other people too. And really, this is the fundamental reason it happens. Any system that's built on an us versus them dynamic will always need a them. It's just how it works. If one group gets absorbed or the focus changes, the system, just by its nature, has to go find a new target to keep itself going. So all of this brings us to the ultimate takeaway from the source material we've been looking at.
it's not really just about history or form. It's a much bigger message about what race really is and how it connects to power.
And here's the crucial thing to get. Racial categories aren't biological facts. They're not set in stone. They are social and political ideas, constructs. And since they were built by systems of power, those very same systems can redefine them, shrink them, or even weaponize them whenever it's convenient.
This line from the source just might be the most powerful summary of this whole idea. It really challenges the notion that being part of a majority group gives you some kind of permanent protection. Instead, it suggests it's just a temporary alliance, an alliance that only lasts as long as it's useful to the people in charge. And why is that? Because at its core, power is impersonal. It's not loyal to any group of people. It's loyal to one thing, its own interests, its own survival and growth. And when those interests change, so do the alliances, and so do the definitions of who's in and who's out.
So we're going to end it here with the final, pretty provocative question that the source material leaves us with. It kind of reframes this whole thing, moving it away from just individual identity and toward this idea of collective action. The warning is that if you stay quiet while other people are being targeted, you eventually end up standing all by yourself. And it makes you wonder, in a system that seems designed to divide people, is solidarity the only real protection we have?